Okay, so our mock assessment that you've just completed was about how poets present personal experiences. And we were given the poem Remains, and we had to choose one other poem to compare how personal experiences are shown. So I've chosen War Photographer. So in terms of my plan, I'm going to think about Remains as a poem, what I know about the context of the poem, and how that contributes to this idea of personal experiences and how the personal experience of the soldier is shown. So I know when writing Remains that Armitage interviewed soldiers who served in Iraq, and he spent a lot of time trying to understand their personal experiences. Okay. I know that Duffy, Carolyn Duffy, wrote this poem, and she had a close friend who was a war photographer. So she is giving a very in-depth display of what she imagines it might be like for a war photographer having to endure these really harsh conditions, much like a soldier, and how that would affect them, how this personal experience that they've gone through has really affected them. So they have that in common, really. They have this idea that maybe these two poets, both Duffy and Armitage, have really wanted to show the traumatic experience of war and how these individual experiences have really made an impact on these two personas within the poem. So, both of their personal experiences have been traumatic. They've seen war and violence, and their experience has really deeply affected them. Okay? So, in terms of how Remains begins, Remains will say, the first line in it that starts is on another occasion. On another occasion. Excuse me for making that mistake there. Which really gives this sense of like a story. And coupled with the very colloquial language that this persona uses, that this soldier uses, it really feels like he's trying to minimise what has happened to him. He's really trying to minimise the event and the experience. And we see that Armitage does that quite a lot. He's probably trying to, he uses these colloquialisms, to try and really show that maybe these soldiers, they find it hard to express themselves, hard to express what they've been through. And even though this event has affected this man greatly, and we can see through the variety of colloquialisms that Armitage uses, he does seem to try and minimalise it. Maybe he struggles to really express how he's feeling, which isn't, this is very, very usual really for men, especially men of older generations, to really express how they're feeling. Duffy, for example, her war photographer, the persona, is very orderly. He describes how, Duffy describes how the photos are set out in rows, and how, he, to engage with the experience, again. They must prepare themselves in this way. It's really serious. This process is very important, okay? And we can see that their personal experience, deeply affected them. In terms of remains, we use, there is lots of repetition here that Armitage uses to show how affected he is. He's really damaged by this guilt, possibly armed, possibly not. And he can't escape the thought. We've got those verbs of bursts and blink to really show that this memory, this experience is never going to leave him wherever he goes. It has a great effect on him, a real physical effect, as well as a mental, there's a real mental impact. His mental health is clearly, it's very troubled. He's struggling. And in terms of how the war photographer is affected by his poems, by his photos, is we can see that his hand trembles. So again, he has a very physical response to the experience that he has been through. Okay. And what is interesting about these two poems is that they share in common that both poets call these experiences, the things that they have seen, agonies. So we have got Armitage using the image of agony, and we have Duffy using the metaphor 100 agonies in black and white. Okay, so again, really painting this idea of a very sombre scene that's being displayed. And also that these memories, these experiences are pretty much the epitome of pain. Okay? And we've got these 100 agonies in black and white. And that lovely detail of black and white, yes, this is the photograph that we can see. But it's also suggesting just how horrific these experiences were for the photographer. There is no life, no colour in these images. And, no life in what he has seen. It's just all been death. And that really connects. We can even add that to this idea of all flesh is grass. That very biblical allusion that Duffy uses from the Bible. This idea, ashes to ashes, dust to dust, all flesh is grass. She uses this allusion here to really emphasise just how much death and destruction and pain the photographer has seen. And, he cannot break this cycle just from taking photographs. We can see as well that these personal experiences are long-lasting. This is another similarity for the two of them. These experiences stay with him. We've got remains referencing the experiences, the blood shadow. This, what is left of this man stays on the street and it stays with the persona. And we also have that, reference to Lady Macbeth. This idea that the guilt, was he armed, was he not, completely overtakes him. And, we also have the personal experience of the photographer as frustrating. And it's frustrating because, the public don't really appreciate the thing that he's gone through, these traumatic events and experience that he's gone through. To share the stories with the world, they go back to their pre-lunch beers. They move on very quickly. They blink their tears away. So we can see that in one side, Armitage is as long-lasting, and it's long-lasting for the photographer too, but his, situation is frustrating as well. And I guess you can make that comparison in terms of frustration, because the persona in Remains is also, he is frustrated, he is desperate to be rid of this experience. He describes how he just wants to flush it. The drink and the drugs won't flush him out. It's like waste to him. So in terms of where we were going with this, There's so many different ideas that we can look at to compare. We'll have some similarities and some differences, but we need to make sure we're linking everything back to personal experiences.